Welcome to Typecasting.
Pop culture by the numbers. That's your host, Lucas Graydon. And while I'm not 100% sure about his sidekick, his high kick is amazing.
And that's your co-host, Murjanatu. And I don't know about my sidekick, but I'm her sidekick, and I'd like to say that I rock.
Yes, you do. Well, here on Typecasting, two Enneagram Type 4s, our favorite, are having a spoiler-filled discussion of the best fictional characters and where they fall on the Enneagram of personality.
There are a few ground rules here at Typecasting. You know them. So before we get down to business, let's review.
Rule number 1, every type is beautiful.
Number 2, the Enneagram is a tool, not a box.
Rule number 3, we only type fictional characters. You are always the authority on your own type.
Number 4, our favorite, we are not experts. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited that I get to introduce the first of our quote-unquote sidekicks today because I love her, I love the actress, I love the character. We are starting off with Valkyrie, which, okay, I don't know if this is true or not. I have not done my research, but I'm pretty sure her technical, name is, Brunhilde or something.
It's it starts with a B. It kept referring to her when I was doing my research as her real name.
Yeah.
Let me find it. I wrote it down. Valkyrie, and this Valkyrie's specific name is Brunhilde. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
And I was kind of in the ballpark there, but she was a Valkyrie. But obviously there were multiple, but since she's the only one, she's Valkyrie. It's a cooler name anyway. We'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get down to business with Brunhilde, aka Valkyrie, and talk about what we think her Enneagram type is. So Murjanatu, right off the bat, what are you thinking?
Well, Lucas, I am not 100% sure on this one. I have a couple of feelings. So when we first meet her, she's obviously in a place, she's not very healthy. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so, a really important factor of the Enneagram that we don't talk about super often is that, my dad used to ask me, okay, which one's the best one? And we've shared it on the first podcast. There isn't really a best one because each number has different variations of health. So depending on how healthy or unhealthy you are in situations, whether it's by factors of your own or just their circumstances, you can be in different levels of health.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever we're talking about this, that one time we were talking about Ultron, and I was like, well, I don't want to be on the record saying that Ultron's this summer because it might be bad, but he might just be in a place that's not the best of health, right?
Right. There's different levels of development too.
Of course.
In your own personal Enneagram journey. There's definitely, they appear in both good and bad ways. I definitely see what you're saying.
Exactly. And so one of the things that I feel like we see when we first meet Valkyrie, I think it might be kind of hard to figure it out, but you can tell about who she is. And I think when we see her later on in Endgame, when we see her character, I think we see more of her true self. And I have decided that I believe that she's a 3. I think she tries really hard. Being a Valkyrie is incredibly challenging to get to that level of warrior and to be that status. So she obviously had to try really hard to do it. And then also when she's a bounty hunter, she's the best one. Whatever she does, she's the best. And she enjoys that high life, whether it's the fame and glory that comes with being a Valkyrie or the best booze when she's a bounty hunter. So I'm pretty clear. I feel like she's a 3. And I think again, spoilers are in this conversation. I think that she's a 3-wing too. Because she wants to help, she's loyal to her people, and she's willing to do anything to sacrifice, but I think she's also really competitive. She doesn't have necessarily that selflessness that a 1 has. I'm not saying that she's not selfless. I'm just saying I think that, I think she smiles at the fame and the glory, but that is not a bad thing at all. I just think that that's probably something she basks in a little.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to be totally honest. 3 did not cross my mind at all when I was thinking about Valkyrie. Fair. But I love that. And I'm going to dig into that. But first, I'll share where I came in. And I was between I kind of pulled a Lucas special where I was it's between two numbers that are right next to each other. So which one is the type and which one is the wing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So and you may be able to guess, but I came in between the 7 wing 8 and the 8 wing 7. Um, and
Hmm.
I came in thinking a little bit about our conversation about Thor in Endgame, way back at the beginning, if you can remember, episode 3, and how Thor, when he fails at the end of, or at the beginning of Endgame, he really loses himself into a lot of kind of excess and drinking. And we talked a little bit about how sevens have a very addictive personality. And in that state of unhealth, like you were talking about, they can be the most prone to some of those unhealthy addictions. And obviously, as we see Valkyrie at the beginning of Thor Ragnarok, like you were talking about, she is in a state of unhealth and she is drinking throughout all the day and kind of numbing herself to get by. And so I thought I saw some of the 7 there. But then as I looked to her in health, as you were talking about kind of later on, I don't know that she shares a lot of characteristics with like healthy 7s. I don't think she's kind of the bubbly personality that a lot of 7s have, you know, but I could see an argument then, and that's where I went over to the 8. And the type 8 or the challenger, obviously, as you said, she's a fierce warrior and she has that power. And as we see in Endgame, as Thor is kind of making her queen of Asgard, I think she has this sense of regalness about her where she is like, I understand this responsibility and I'm going to take on that responsibility. And I think that she will make an incredible queen. I think like she has that natural born sense of leadership that a lot of 8s have. And so I had come in kind of as an 8 wing 7 and I could still see it. But I love what you have to say about the 3. So before I dig into the 3, do you have any thoughts about the 8 or the 7 over there?
I will say, like, I hear you, but I think it's kind of the obvious choice, right? Like, I think each time we
Yes.
we see
Yes.
someone who might have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder, we run straight to the 8. And I think that, like, I've
Mm.
spent a lot of time like considering her health and her and where she was, and versus even like knowing what her past was and how she was a Valkyrie and she was a leader of this beautiful pack of women who fight, and then where she ends up, like, I wanted to give her, not that like there are healthy 8s out there and not everyone has a chip on their shoulder, that's not what I'm saying, but I am saying I do think that she is a 3, and I think that's like the more complex answer. And so like for the first time, I think I like, sometimes I just think I'm right because I feel it, but this one I'm like, no, I had a good argument, I think I'm right.
No, totally. And I will say, I think I totally agree. I wanted to hear what you had to say about the 8 and the 7, but I think you've convinced me of the 3. And something that really kind of leads me in that direction is actually, we were talking just before we got on mic about how I was working on kind of going back to basics about the Enneagram, because it's really easy for us, I think, to get lost in the weeds of all these characters and, oh, what does it all mean? And I was like, let me take a step back and look at kind of the heart of each of the 9 types and what is their basic need, what is their basic fear, or what do they need to avoid. And with the type 3s are really motivated by a fear of or a need to avoid failure. And I think you're right. She was so successful. She was hyper competent as one of the Valkyrie warriors. And then she was the only survivor. And she sees that moment against Hela as the greatest failure in her career. And I think that we see that it is that failure that really drove her to that place of loneliness and kind of despair that we see her then when she first meets Thor. And I think that we see kind of that like her greatest weakness almost, or the thing that really like eats at her to her core, is that failure in her past. And so I can totally see how that stems from her being a type 3 and just having that natural avoidance of failure, and to then have to face her failure so head on, and she just doesn't feel equipped to do so. And so I totally see. I think she has and I use this word all the time when we talk about 3s, but I think she has the charisma. I think she has the swag and kind of the like, she walks around kind of like she runs the place because she knows that she can and should. Like, but I think she also has a beautiful sense of humility when we get to the end of Endgame, where she's like, wait, are you seriously asking me to be queen?
Thor, but people need a king.
No, they already have one.
That's funny. You being serious?
It's time for me to be who I am rather than who I'm supposed to be. But you're a leader. That's who you are.
But I think that she will take that opportunity seriously, and I'm excited to see her get some more screen time in Thor Love and Thunder.
Oh, me too. And one of the things that I said, I was like, first of all, when I was like taking my notes, I was like, she's definitely a Slytherin. And that's a different podcast, but I was like, I don't really know why. And that's also kind of helped me pick the 3.
House casting? Is that coming soon?
Wait, Patreon?
Ooh. Okay, so I agree with you on the wing 2 then too. The 3 wing 2.
Yes.
I'm sold. Okay, so
Yay! I feel like this is the first time I've won this whole time. It's not a competition, but I do have a strong wing 3.
Who's next?
All right, well, I am elated and joyful to introduce our next character, Happy Hogan. The man who is casted as Happy, and who plays Happy Hogan, Iron Man's sidekick, his best friend, is actually Jon Favreau, who has also directed the first Iron Man movie and the most recent Lion King and The Jungle Book and a bunch of other movies. Like,
yeah,
he's kind of a really famous director.
He's kind of one of the big reasons that the MCU became the success that it was. Like, if Iron Man hadn't gone well, the whole thing could have crashed and burned. And so I think it's cool that he has had that presence behind screen from the very beginning, but has also been on screen as a part of the universe for as long as he has.
Yeah, I feel like it's a pretty cool, pretty fun piece of trivia just to know that. Okay, Lucas, I am very curious on this one. What did you think Happy was?
Okay, so we had a brief conversation, and I wanted to bring this on mic about how I was a little worried that our Sidekicks episode, quote unquote, would have a similar fear to when we did our Smarties episode, where we were like, is every Smartie just going to be a 5? I thought, is every sidekick just going to be a 2? The 2 or the helper are obviously, I think, a really easy, obvious choice for like, they are the helpers. They're the ones that are always kind of there by the lead character's side. So they must be 2s. And obviously we didn't think that Valkyrie was a 2, and we'll see where our future characters go. But I do kind of think that Happy is a 2, is a helper. So I just think about how he's been such a loyal and steadfast friend to Tony from the very beginning, and how he continues that loyalty and that connection through those relationships into the future. Past Tony's death, as I was saying that, I was thinking about Peter, obviously, and their relationship in both Homecoming and Far From Home. And I think they have a really beautiful relationship in Far From Home. He's there to kind of console Peter and tell him that he's never going to be the next Iron Man.
I don't know if that's me, Happy. I'm not Iron Man.
You're not Iron Man. You're never going to be Iron Man. Nobody could live up to Tony. Not even Tony. Tony was my best friend. And he was a mess. He second-guessed everything he did. He was all over the place. The one thing that he did that he didn't second-guess was picking you.
And I just think that's a beautiful scene and really highlights their relationship. But also, it just came to me, that scene in Endgame after the funeral when he's sitting next to Morgan and she says she wants a cheeseburger. And I think he's such a loving person, and he is always there to help. And he has that sense of selflessness that I think is really beautiful in the 2. And I think type 2s have an ability, maybe more so than any other type, to just lay down anything to help the people that need them. And I think that we see Happy from the very beginning and through all the way through, just being there as that steadfast helper. And so obviously I think it's kind of the easy answer, as you were saying about maybe the 8 with Valkyrie. And I'd love to hear if you have a different opinion. But that's kind of where I came in to begin with, was on the type 2.
Lucas, first of all, yes, we definitely shared that concern that they're all going to be 2s. But as you know, just a little insight into my personality, our first ever podcast where I like researched a ton, I thought Happy was one of the characters. It was Iron Man. So I just pulled up my notes from there.
Oh my gosh.
And before we picked the sidekick episode, I decided that he was a 2 also. I think he is incredibly thoughtful. I think that he has this empathy about him. I think of I love Far From Home and seeing Happy's relationship with Peter Parker, and how, I remember you brought it up to me, just the scene where Peter is messing around on their private jet, and he's trying to decide what to do with the suit, how to elevate it for the battle he's about to go on, and Happy just gets teary-eyed. And just I don't think many friends would notice or see that correlation. But I think Happy is just he's so empathetic. He's so here for Tony even after death, like you said. And I just think he's just a loyal and good friend. And I think he's doing a lot of things. He doesn't agree with Tony 90% of the time, but he's always there to support him. He's a great sounding board for him, great listener. And even Morgan talking about cheeseburgers and Happy just remembering that was Tony's favorite thing. I just think it's so sweet to watch that and experience that, and I really love it.
Yeah. I do see him as a 2.
No contest 2.
What do you think? So I had written down a 2-wing 3, borrowing a little bit from the Achiever, but I want to hear what you think his wing might be.
I agree. I think he's a 2-wing 3. That's what I wrote down originally, and I think it's really evident, and I think he is a little competitive. He does love the limelight. I think he definitely wouldn't have this job if he didn't, right? I think that you're right.
I like the scene where at the beginning of Homecoming, Tony's talking about, oh, that's Happy, he wants to be promoted, and Happy's like, that is a private conversation. I asked you about that in private. But he is, I think, looking for opportunities for advancement, and he wants recognition for the hard work that he puts in. He obviously puts it in because he loves and cares about Tony, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't want the recognition, And so that was kind of the scene that I thought of, that I was like, yeah, I can see the wing 3 sneaking in there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad we aligned. Lucas, tell us about our next character. I'm laughing because I love him so much already.
I know. I was just going to say, thinking about him puts a smile on my face. And I think that we're going to have to include at least one of his little recap monologues at some point in this episode.
Yeah, for sure.
But up next, if you don't know who we're talking about, we are talking about Luis from Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp. It is his van that holds the quantum tunnel in the Endgame battle. And he is so much fun. He's played by Michael Pena, and so in research, we struggled to find any fun facts about Luis, but he also has no last name. So that counts as a fun fact, which is interesting. I don't think I noticed before that he didn't have a last name, and I don't know that maybe any of the ex-cons, his Scott Lang's group of friends, any of them have last names, but maybe this is a good time, just as I was thinking about that, to talk about the fact that we were like, okay, let's do an episode about sidekicks. And a majority of the characters that we're talking about today are characters of color, and how we've kind of seen throughout the 22 movies that the sidekick roles are often portrayed by characters of color. We talked about in both Captain America and Iron Man's episodes how they both have their trusty black male sidekick. And even here we have Scott with Luis, and Doctor Strange with Wong, and Thor with Valkyrie. So I think it's kind of interesting, and maybe this is also a little side effect of that is that Luis doesn't even have a full name.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the reasons that we picked Happy to be here instead of an Iron Man is that we were like, we want to give Rhodey the Bunny, like, he is an actual superhero,
Right.
but like he is a sidekick, and so yeah, just something that we should like, I want to put on blast as much as we can is like, come on, we need more superheroes of color. Like, it is a huge, vast universe out there, and even some of our alien friends are like white at the end of the day, and so it's just so I think that was a little bit. That's just something great to call out. And then, yeah, like Luis, I was like, I felt bad for not knowing his last name. And then I was like, oh, he doesn't have one. Like, even in the credits, it's just Luis.
Exactly. Yeah. And I do think that, and we talked about this a little bit with Wakanda and Black Panther and things like that, but I think that the groundwork is being laid and has been laid to elevate some more diverse voices. They just cast Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan, and I'm so excited for her Disney Plus show. And I think that hopefully as we continue into more of the Marvel universe, we'll see one that looks a little bit more like the real world universe with people of all different colors and shapes and sizes. And I'm excited for that.
Yes, it should be awesome.
So now to get back to Luis, the bright spot just brings a smile to my face. What do you think his type on the Enneagram is?
Okay. I have a feeling I am really stuck between two, Lucas.
Ooh,
like,
okay.
As I was kind of thinking about it, part of me, I'm just like, he is so high energy. He's so much fun. He's just like the party. I thought he was a 7, you know? But then when we were discussing just kind of how we always lean on that, I was like, this man is a 2. Like, he's doing everything for his friend. Like, he does not quite understand the complexities of what is the Avengers and who Ant-Man is, or he doesn't actually understand at all. And he's like always there for his friend. The way he understands stories is the complexity of like his relationship to that person, and like the first 30 seconds of him explaining any story that doesn't actually quite add up, but like just explains one little piece of knowledge. Like, he's just talking about how he's related to that person, and I really feel as though he loves people so much, like, and especially Scott Lang, and I just think you can see his friendship, and he's just a great guy. And so again, I'm not sure if I'm just picking all sidekicks and it's just because they are here and awesome and here for us that they're 2s. But even though I see a lot of the 7 qualities in Luis, I really think that he's a 2.
Okay, interesting. Okay.
What do you think?
So I do think that he's a 7, and I think that 7 is kind of like, oh, of course. But I think that as we kind of see through the 2 different Ant-Man movies, I'm thinking about when he is there to pick Scott up from prison.
Hey, how's your girl, man?
She left me.
Oh.
Yeah, my mom died too. And my dad got deported. But I got the van.
It's nice.
Yeah, right?
And Scott gets in the van and he's like, hey, what happened? And no matter what misfortunes like Luis is sharing about his life, he's like, oh, but I got this awesome van. And he just has this smile on his face. I think he is very maybe intentionally, like subconsciously turned off to like the negative. You know, I don't think that he maybe has the tendency to meet people in sadness that I think 2s are really good at doing. I think you're right that he is such a beautiful, steadfast friend, but I also think that 2s live in that feeling triad, and they are always feeling other people's emotions. They're so deeply empathetic, and I don't know that he is great about getting into like the sadness. He's just such a goofball and such a light that I think I really see the beauty of the 7 in him and the way that he always lifts the spirits of everyone around them. And as I was thinking just a little bit, because I recently rewatched Ant-Man and the Wasp, he, I think, maybe has some of that wing 6 in his kind of attention to detail. He is really worried about the business meeting that they have in Ant-Man and the Wasp, and he's like, this is our biggest client, we need to land this deal. Like, Scott, I know you're playing with Cassie right now, but are you sure we need this many? Like, we don't want to overquote them and have them leave. Like, I think that we see that maybe like tendency to caution and to certainty. The 6 really values like certainty and security and like knowing that the ground is beneath their feet. And I can see some of that wing 6 in him maybe. And I know that obviously we don't want to just like, oh, he's smiley, so he's a 7. But I think that in this case, I do see Luis as a type 7. But I see what you're saying about the type 2 too.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially about like meeting people in sadness. But I also do think he's kind of a warrior. Like I think that's kind of where he like over rambles and not warrior is not the proper term to talk about 6s, but I do think that he's like that, and like he does have that loyal group, and like he went to prison and came out with his best buds. Like that's such a 6 move, and like not only like one best bud, but like a crew. And I feel like that's such a 6 move. So
love it.
We see 6s, so 7 wing 6. I'll give you that.
Okay, I love it.
Yes.
Okay, so who is next?
Okay, my main squeeze, Wong. I think he is awesome. I love how he's a comedic relief, and he has like no personality. Like he kind of reminds me of like Drax from Guardians of the Galaxy that we'll get to eventually. But
I see that comparison.
Yes, he is the joke. But like he himself isn't necessarily funny, and I just like the writers I think do such a good job with him. I think he's hilarious. So it's interesting. So just like a fun fact about just kind of how huge and global scale the MCU is. Despite the fact that he was decimated, Wong actually appears in the Chinese posters of Avengers Endgame with the rest of the surviving heroes. So this kind of like hints that maybe he actually survived. But we don't really know, and we don't actually see him evaporate or anything in the actual film.
Right. Interesting. Well, because
so he's kind of one of those, did he dust or not?
Yeah. I have so many questions. I mean, just about like the decimation in general. Like, I would love to know what every single character who survived, like, what they did for those 5 years. I'd love to know where everyone else was when they got dusted, and like what happened when they came back. I think there's so many interesting plot threads that could be picked at there.
Well, and I feel like he was like the most ready. I mean, he had everybody there and was like, let's go. Like when Doctor Strange comes back, he's the one who like gathered the troops.
Yes.
So I was like, you were doing something. I would love
in
to
like
I would
30
watch
seconds.
Yeah,
Like,
I don't know. Yeah, something happened. Not quite, because you forget. That is such a great piece of cinema.
Yes. As I said that,
Because
I was thinking, and I was like, well, actually, because they unsnap, and then Thanos blows up their whole compound, and then there's all that time where they talk to Thanos, and then Cap and Tony and Thor fight him, and then like they're all incapacitated before Cap's the last one standing. So you're right, there is more than 30 seconds there for Doctor Strange to like teleport around and tell everybody to gather the troops.
And I've seen that movie so many times, and each time I am shocked when Black Panther comes out. I'm so excited. And I'm like, oh yeah, that happened. So it's fun. Okay, so Lucas, what do you think about our boy Wong?
So Wong is the one that I came written with 2 different options as I was thinking about him. And I had kind of one secure, like, oh, for sure, obviously, but then another number kind of started creeping at the back of my mind. So I started, and I think I'm more solid maybe at the type 1, the reformer, the perfectionist. They have a couple different names, but I was just thinking about the role that he fulfills, especially in the main Doctor Strange movie where we get to see the most of him. And he is the one, I think, who's always trying to keep Steven in check. He's always the one who has all the rules about which books he can check out, which books are forbidden and off limits. And Doctor Strange or Steven has to kind of teleport those little gateways into the library to like steal the books, because Wong is so about the rules and doing things the right way and following the right protocols. I think he also has that sense of like no nonsense that a lot of ones can carry around, where, like you said, like he is the comic relief, but he's not the one making jokes. Like he often doesn't get the jokes. And Doctor Strange is like, do you ever laugh? Like, do you understand these jokes? And he is very like, no nonsense, like by the book, by the numbers, kind of black and white, I think, in a way that I saw the type 1, and I could definitely still see the type 1. But as I was thinking just a little bit more, like I said, the other number that came up in my thoughts was the type 5. And this also may be kind of an obvious one because he's a librarian and 5s are all about gathering knowledge.
Okay.
But I was thinking I could see him as kind of a type 5 where he really values like having that knowledge, like being the protector and the guardian of that knowledge, and thinking about the role that he fulfills at Camartage. And so that was the second number that kind of came up as I was thinking. But the 1 was my first thought, and I think that's where I'm kind of landing. What do you think?
I also settled in the 1. So I had to do a lot of information. Like, I had to do a lot of research on Wong.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, like, Doctor Strange is like one of my least favorite characters and plot lines. And so I like really did do some research, and I totally agree with you. I think he finds a lot of comfort in the rules. Like, he didn't become a monk for fun. Like, I think it was mostly like it felt right to him. It was good and just. And I think the rules and ordinances bring him a lot of peace. And I think he appreciates the amount of time and schedule in each day. And I also think he's obviously that martyr and reformer that the One Wing 2 is. Like, I am so sold. I'm right there with you, Lucas. Like, he's definitely like, I am here to bring others peace and joy and happiness and justice. And he's here to keep everything in balance, which I think is like different too, because I think one of the best lines is when he says like, the Avengers are saving the world.
Well, heroes like the Avengers protect the world from physical dangers. We sorcerers safeguard it against more mystical threats.
Yeah, and so like that's so perfect and tells like he has this selfless heart to help, but also like he literally like is a timekeeper, and like the ones love their planners, they love their organizers, and I feel like it's just like, yeah, he's definitely a 1, no ifs or buts about it. And like also just keeping Doctor Strange, who is a 5, in check. I think it's like perfect. My best friend growing up is a 1, and like we always say like, I keep her wild and she keeps me safe. And I feel like that's kind of how Wong is, like, where he just is like
totally
keeping everybody safe.
Yes, I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about some of the ones in my life, and I think that they are just so good at being the voice of reason and being the one who like reins you back in and is like, okay, wait. And he talks too about like, we have sworn our lives to protect the stone. That is our one and only job. We're not in Infinity War when I think it's Tony asks, oh, can't we just throw that down the garbage disposal? And he's like, no, like I swore this oath and I'm upholding that oath. Like the rest of this, like I will help if I can. But like first and foremost is the commitment that I have already made, like the rules that I am already following. And I think that's like what he holds really near and dear to his heart.
Yes, I agree.
I also love that scene just before Hulk is sent back from Thor's ship, and he and Doctor Strange are getting ready to go get lunch, and Doctor Strange is like, you don't have any money on you, and he's like, attachment to the physical is detachment from the spiritual. He's just like, sorry. He's like, but I'll take a tuna melt. He's like, if you're the one, I do think, and I love the like Beyonce running joke throughout the Doctor Strange film, and he's listening to Single Ladies in the Library. I think he does have a fun side. I had him actually written down as a wing 9, but I can definitely see your argument for the wing 2. So I'll take it. The 1 wing 2.
Yes. I love it. I'm so happy that we got on. Wait, I feel like this was such a clear episode. You know what I mean? Like we felt very good, and I was nervous we weren't gonna have enough content because these are all sidekicks, but I feel really good about where we landed with all of them.
Yeah, smooth sailing. It just felt like
smooth sailing.
So easy. Just I felt like we really got these characters. Although now that we say that, I feel like this is the episode that we're going to get all the emails about that we were totally wrong about every single one of them.
Yeah, when we're aligned, like other people out there, there's no way.
Yes. So, if you do disagree with us, Murjanatu, how can they get in touch?
Well, I hope you don't disagree with us, but you can always get in touch with us. Maybe to just say hey on our socials at Typecastingpod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at typecastingpod@gmail.com. And as always, you can interact on our website, typecastingpod.com.
Yes, and if you maybe disagree with one of us more strongly than the other, or just like one of us better than the other, don't worry. I know that Murjanatu is all of yours favorite. You can find her on Twitter at Murjana, the number 2 _, and on Instagram at Murjana, the number 2. And you can get in touch with me at my website, lucasgraydon.com. And we can't wait to see you next week as we take on some of the evildoers and maybe misunderstood villains of the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the numbers. And that's your co-host, Murjanatu Matua, who is my sidekick. Or, no, wait, I didn't mean to say it like
You're
that.
my sidekick.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Bloopers. Welcome to the bloopers, everybody.